Hello, stranger. You know, I had a feeling today. Didn't know who was going to walk through those doors. But I knew someone was coming. And I knew someone needed a place. So I prepared one for you. I don't need your name. I don't need where you're coming from. But I can tell you need a spot. And so I've got a bed. And I've got some food for the morning. And then we can talk from there. Here we are. You know, since I've come back to these Decan walks, I have inevitably had to include as part of my context the journey that I've had this past year with my dad and his experience with glioblastoma. And I do this with hesitancy because I don't want to make him a token or an example. He is here and he is living his life and dealing with one of the more difficult diagnoses that anyone can possibly get. But, you know, it keeps shaping the experience of these Decan walks also. I was on the phone with my parents for Father's Day recently, and checking in, seeing how Dad and Mom were doing. And my mom started sending me photos. So they have, before my dad got his diagnosis, my parents both agreed to an arrangement with my mother's parents, my grandparents, which are both still alive, and they graciously offered to renovate my mom's childhood home to create an in-law suite for my grandparents, and my parents would come in and care for them in their latter years. This was the exchange, and this was the agreement. My dad had also, well, both of my parents, but my dad primarily, had both accepted a job wherein it was kind of a dream job for my dad. My dad took the job of being a nourishment and encouragement for the different missionaries across Europe for his particular denomination, for the Free Methodist Church. So his job was to coordinate all of these European missionaries and offer them nourishment, essentially, offer them encouragement, offer them support in whatever ways he can. This deeply satisfied one of my dad's passions, which is to be available globally. And it was going to be placing him in a lot more travel. And so my parents felt it advantageous to take this arrangement where they would be caring for my now quite elderly grandparents, my mother's parents, and when my dad had to leave for an extended period of time, my mom would be able to be there with her parents. Everyone would be taking care of each other under one roof. All right, so long story short, my father's diagnosis derailed all of this, right? And the travel that he was expecting is no longer an option at the moment, and for the foreseeable future. It's off the table. So after having received his diagnosis and well into his treatment, my parents had to plan to make this move. which was meant to be essentially in-house hospice for my grandparents. However, it seems that my dad will need these cares simultaneously, if not before, my mother's parents. So, regardless, there is a shedding of all of my parents' last decade and plus years of living in a certain way, with a certain aesthetic, a certain type of house, being certain types of hosts, and deciding to let go of what was not conducive to their new life, which was to be doing the same thing, but now under a shared household of 2 generations. So, they went about this work. And my sister and I and my wife and my sister's husband all helped make this transition happen, and it's still not completed. But it was a major, to be a late, many months into treatment activity for my father has been a lot. It's a lot to handle. And yet, there's something apropos about this, hearkening back to an older time when generations consolidated and you cared for your parents under the same roof that they cared for you in. And there's this reciprocity and this beautiful mutual cocooning and also growth capacity between multiple generations. There's a security that's earned, that is not something that is part of a lot of modern people's experience, at least in this country or in the West. So it's been a difficult thing because it's not what it originally was. It's been tough for my grandparents. It's been tough for my mom. It's been tough for my dad. And my dad's condition also just brings natural difficulties. It brings natural challenges, new challenges each day that are beyond the pair of just renegotiating your space and your time with new roommates that happen to be your wife's parents, right? So there's a lot to navigate. So anyway, long story short, my mom shared, in response to the question, how is Dad doing? How are you all feeling? How is everybody faring? How's the settling going, right? She responds with sending about 5 or 6 photos of a new activity that my dad has decided to undertake, which is to wake up each morning, head over, he's usually awake before everyone else, head over to the dry erase board that's readily available, light candles, and then either a quote, a prayer, something from his memory, something that he had floating around in his dreams that he feels he would like it to be a presiding thought that is in the space for that day. He will take the time to write it down. And he writes it out, and as we talked about with the tumor in the splenium of the corpus callosum, it's not a straightforward, easy task to take the image and take the glyph of the letters and put the image together with the glyphs of the letters. Okay, so it's a laborious process that wouldn't necessarily have been. I've mentioned that my dad is a minister, right? So he's used to putting together messages, putting together a thought process, curating a prayer, okay? He's used to doing that for people, and yet now he has a lot of his toolbox cut from him. And yet, he's choosing to wake up every morning standing in front of a dry erase board and deliberately choosing to translate out a message that he would like to have and to be with throughout his day, and he would like it to exist in his shared space. So it's as much a message for his wife, for my mother, for my grandparents, for his in-laws. It's as much a message for them about his state and about his hopes and about his dreams for the day. And so they've been doing this daily. And the first one she sent me couldn't be more appropriate to the theme that I want to talk about today. It's this. O God, teach me the grace of less, of slower, of enough, of contentment. Teach me the grace of leaving a little room in my glass so that, and I love this not deliberate but beautifully placed space, by your generous pour, my cup may runneth over. So that's a prayer to God, and I've allowed myself a lot of space to give this preamble. But what I think that prayer is about preparing room. It's about leaving space. What does it mean to make space for another life? Or if you want to put it a different way, how do we make room to prepare for another life to enter? We don't have to do this. This is something that is not a foregone conclusion. Effort must be made. And one of my favorite topics, historical images, if you want, is to do with the Greek conception of hospitality and the rules of hospitality and the rules of engagement for hospitality. It was an elaborate set of rules that were not just laid out to give you rules about how you have to be or whatever. They were, sorry, I'm rambling here. The rules were set out for the purpose of facilitating the art of making room. That is my point here. They were very sophisticated in understanding that not only does love have its genesis in the art of hospitality and preparing for hospitality, which is the art of making room. It is a perfect teacher for love and acceptance and the acknowledgement of another. Whoever that other may be, without judgment, before judgment, how do you make room for another? Someone outside of yourself. So the Greek concept was called Xenia, and the main rule of Xenia is that before you could ask the person who knocks at your door, before you could ask their name, or ask where they were from, or ask their purposes, before you could ask anything, you needed to provide a space for them and nourish them, receive them, shelter them, feed them. The reason that you need to do that is because that stranger at any point, any time, could be a god in disguise. And so you have the concept of Theoxeny. How do you host a god? And you need to have nuance in your rules, because sometimes a god is in disguise, sometimes a god is self-apparent, sometimes a god is dwelling within a peasant, a mere mortal, and an unimpressive one at that. So how do you receive another Theoxeny, and how do you identify the god in all and not violate the god in the other? Do you prepare a way? So, this is Cancer, Decan 1. This is the first Decan of Cancer. We are in the depth of summer. The summer solstice, the Cancer solstice, has just passed. We are in the first 10 days of the longest 10 days waning of the year. It's really hot here in Florida. But Cancer is in the heat of winter, or heat of summer, is teaching us something about what it is to be enrobed in a body on Earth. So, the card for Cancer is the Chariot. I mean, it's an interesting look for this sign. Okay? And we know the image, the glyph for Cancer is the crab. So what's the Chariot about? All right? The ruling planet of Cancer is the moon. Now this is interesting, because if you've looked at tarot at all, but you've only just barely looked, you will see that there is a card both for the sun, which represents the sun, the planet. Well, it's a star, but the sun. And there's also a card for the moon. However, counterintuitively, this card does not represent the moon. This card represents Pisces, the sign. The card that's meant to represent the moon is the High Priestess. High Priestess, she is not only standing on a moon, but her crown has crescent moons. She is the ultimate example of the moon in the tarot. Okay? Now we're also going through the Chaldean order. So we're moving through the planets. The next in line is Venus. So the Chaldean planetary ruler for the first decan of Cancer is the Empress. It's Venus. Venus, the card for Venus is the Empress. The Hebrew word associated to the Empress is Dalet. This is the Chariot. The Hebrew word associated to the Chariot is Cheth. Dalet, that means door. Chet, that means the wall. So, Venus moving through Cancer could be called the door in the wall. So Cancer is the crab. Cancer is associated to the moon. So there's something motherly and matrix-like and loom-like, if we're going to continue our thread metaphor, when it comes to Cancer. There's something about home. There's something about the protective nature of having your shell, your home being with you at all times. And there's something about Venus, the great attractor, being the door in that shell, in that armor. And what does that door open to? That opens to your soft, most vulnerable part, which is your heart. Okay, so what is the Decan card then? The Decan card here is the Two of Cups. We've started again. We are now in Hokma again, up at the top, the number 2. That is in each of the 4 elements. Hokma is the 2. And when we're in Cancer, we're in water. So this is the Two of Cups. And look at this lovely image. We have not only that medical double serpent, we have 2 people exchanging cups. Health seems to be involved here. This seems to be amicable, and we don't see how much is in the cups. All right, let's go to the earlier decks, or the later decks, sorry. Later decks. This is Meleen's most recent 777 deck, where she draws mostly from the Picatrix and the Book of 777, which is an Aleister Crowley book. She gives you the Golden Dawn name here for the Two of Cups, which is love, or the Lord of Love. Now, we spent a lot of time in Gemini Decan III talking about Chiron. Well, the Picatrix image and a lot of the other antecedent images talk about a Centaur type of being in this Decan. There's also language that has to do with dolphins, that has to do with horses. Dolphins, horses, blending of dolphins and horses, etc., etc. All right, so Telos. I don't need to show you any of the other images from Telos, but I do love the Tabula Mundi Chariot. So the Cancer card for Tabula Mundi is beautiful. We'll unpack this further in another episode, but this is the image for the Chariot. And I want you to see that these 2 beings are water horses, sea horses, half horse, half dolphins, or in Greek, hippocampus, hippocampi in the plural. That is half fish, half horse being, hippocampi. What else has the name hippocampus? Well, it's in your brain. I don't know why we have to keep coming back to neuroscience, but it seems to be pretty relevant to memory palaces of the tarot. Hippocampus. We'll talk about that in a future episode. You have 2 horses, 2 seahorses that are driving this chariot, which is literally a surfer navigating a giant wave enclosure. Love this Chariot card. In the Two of Cups, for the same deck, you can see the horse half dolphin beings. You also see that the cups that they're spitting into, if you look closely, They are not overflowing. They're tipped, and they have room to receive more. Empress talks about Dalet here. You can see that the door that the Empress opens is the door to the heart. And the heart has honeycomb. The Empress recurring image is the bee, the honeybee. Okay. I've probably gone too far, but I hope that by the end of this whole exploration that we will arrive at understanding something a little bit better through these images, which is the art of making room. Super basic concept, but pretty deep, and one that presides over this entire stretch of sign in Cancer. The art of making room. This is step one of hospitality. So, the Lord of Love. I think this card is more about priming, making a place for love to dwell. So if Gemini, our last Decan, Gemini III, asked, what survives after catastrophe? The answer there was shared light. So no matter how much we lose, how much gets consumed by darkness, what remains is the shared light. This is, how is that light received? How is a space made for that light to dwell, to remain? That's what Cancer 1 becomes about. So, my dad's prayer. It's about grace. It's about understanding that a full cup is not a useful cup at all. You want to be useful as a living, responsible being in the cosmos. I do, at least. And the way to do that, to be so overcome with grace, with the grace of the divine, of the larger than you, if you like, the only way to achieve that, or to invite that, or to allow it, is to leave room in your cup. That's the point of the prayer. So your cup can be filled with nourishing water, and it can also be filled with negative thoughts and negative feelings. Your cup can be full of misery. It still doesn't give you space for grace. So, while we're accustomed to think of Cancer as being mostly about nourishing, these cards, with the wall for the Chariot, the door for the Chaldean ruler for Venus, the door in the wall. So it's not just about nourishing. It's about building an enclosure. It's about building a house, having a womb space, the enclosure necessary for something to grow. That's the idea here. So, we showed the image of Chiron, or a centaur that very well may be associated to Chiron. And I also talked about Chiron in the last episode. However, I feel that this is the Decan where it's most appropriate to introduce Chiron's wife. Her name is Chariklo. Chariklo is, like Chiron's mother, a water nymph who, in various mythological tellings, may or may not have shapeshifted into a centaur when she married Chiron, or was literally just always a shapeshifter, which I like a little bit more. She is a shapeshifter. She knows how to make space internally for the other, and in a non-obtrusive way. It's fascinating when you think about shapeshifter in that regard. Chariklo is Chiron's wife. She is also his partner in healing. They live together in this cave, which was also mentioned in the last episode, but the cave is another type of womb. It is the spot that Chiron was abandoned by his original mother. It is also an enclosure in a mountain that I imagine, I don't know if it's written in the myth at all, but I imagine to be the source of a intermountain spring. Which is why I like that Chariklo is comfortable there. So in a way, the spring that was trapped in the mountain that comes forward through this second womb for Chiron is a form of healing that is the blood of the wound. It's the blood pouring from the wound, but it's, in this case, it's healing spring water. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to paint a picture of Chiron's wound and his wounding and his role as healer and his role as mentor and his role as host are linked to the cave, linked to this dwelling place, and linked to his partnership with Chariklo. If Chiron means hand, he is hands-on healing. He is craftsmanship. He is everything to do with hands-on transmission. Chariklo is hands-off. Chariklo is about everything is already in its right place. Nothing ever needed to be changed about it. It has always and was always perfect. You're just noticing how perfect it all was. Now, it's that profound sense. Chariklo arranges in that regard. Sometimes it takes a lifetime, up to age 62, when she makes one full pass around your zodiac. At age 62, it's that moment when you go, okay, I didn't have to seek. It all was always right there. I couldn't see it yet. That is Chariklo energy, as I'm painting it, at least here. It's beautiful. Her name means graceful spinner. And when we go into her astronomy, the name is bore out. She's at perfect 3/5 proportion between the other bodies around her. She does not. She's exactly between them. She does not ever pass across over the orbit of any other orbiting body. She's between Saturn and Uranus. As opposed to Chiron, which has a crazy elliptical orbit, and it's not a perfect circle at all. and he goes into the orbit of Saturn at various points and comes back out again. So he is often the one who ushers people into the cave and ushers people out into the world after being taught and nourished by this duo. He's the one who crosses the thresholds. He puts his hand on your back and takes you out into the world or brings you further into the cave. Chariklo remains exactly beautifully proportioned. And what's further, she's the only body of her type. Chiron is a centaur that was discovered. It was the first of the Kuiper Belt objects, and it was discovered in 1977. Chariklo is one of the more recent, so there have been more in the same area in 1997. So 20-year span between them. But Chariklo is a very small body that is the only example that we know of that has rings. So there are ice rings that are perfectly distanced apart. And nobody totally knows exactly how they're maintained. The presiding theory is that there are shepherding moods here, just like there is in Saturn. Shepherding moods that maintain the perfect edge of the ice particles. Wild. They're perfectly proportioned. She's a graceful spinner. The two together, if you think about it, we talked about how before we feed the raw wool into the spindle so that it becomes a thread, what we do is take the raw wool and we wrap it around our thigh, which is the site of Chiron's wounding. And then it's fed into the spindle, and the spindle is the graceful spinner in this case. It is Chariklo. Those two actions together is a dance that has to do with the art of making room. It has to do with the perfect, most exemplary hospitality on view in the Greek world for a culture that put a lot of thought into hospitality and the importance. I might return to them, but they're beautiful. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the fact that the Two of Cups is two cups. They are tilted up too far in the Rider-Waite image to know this for a fact, but my suggestion is that these are not totally full cups. There's room to receive whatever is in the cup of the other lover. So that, to me, is an important distinction, is that love in this case is not fusion. It's not two becoming one in any sort of sense. It's about exchange. It's about making room to receive another without needing them to be different. You're making room for their actual shape. That's real, the beginning stages of real love. That's hospitality. So, I think that I have said everything that I need to say. I have my dad's prayer, which is to God. I don't know if he wrote that prayer or if he read it or received it from somebody else, but that prayer very well could be a supplication to Chariklo, to the graceful spinner, help me not to try to fill my cup fully. Help me to choose less. Allow me to see how I can choose less, and how choosing less is the act of making room to receive. It's not doing it because you expect to receive, but you're leaving room for come what may, for whatever it might be. You don't know if it's going to be a god in disguise. You don't know if it's going to be a negative intentioned human in disguise. You don't know and you can't know, and part of the point of true hospitality in its strictest and most noble sense is that it doesn't matter. You can be impeccable in this regard. You can make room. You can make room for the light that remains after the catastrophe. It's the art of making room. It's the only way the light will stay. All right, that's all for now. Much love. I wanted this to be much shorter than this. That's okay. We will see you in a few days for Cancer Decan 2.